I remember the exact sound of the door closing. It wasn't loud, not dramatic at all, just a soft click that echoed longer than it should have. That sound told me I was alone. Truly alone. Everyone had left the room, believing there was nothing more to see, nothing more to wait for, and certainly nothing more to hope for. They thought I couldn't hear them. For weeks, I had been lying in that hospital bed, my body heavy like stone, my eyelids shut as if they had been sealed forever. Doctors used words like unresponsive and vegetative state. My daughter-in-law cried loudly in front of others, but her tears always dried too quickly. My son stood stiff, checking his watch more than my face. Nurses whispered outside the curtain, already preparing themselves for the end. But inside me, somewhere deep where fear and memory still lived, I was awake. Not fully, not clearly, but enough to know what was happening. Enough to hear every conversation they assumed I would never remember. Enough to feel the cold loneliness when hands stopped holding mine and prayers turned into paperwork. That morning, they gathered around my bed one last time. I could sense it. The air felt different, heavier, like a farewell dressed up as concern. My daughter-in-law spoke first, her voice tight and controlled. She hasn't moved in days. The doctor said there's no change. My son sighed. We've done everything we can. Those words hurt more than any needle ever had. They talked about me like I was already gone. About costs. About arrangements. About how long they could keep coming back like this. No one asked if I could hear them. No one imagined that behind these closed eyes, a 72-year-old woman was listening, counting every word, storing every betrayal. Then came the moment that changed everything. Well, my daughter-in-law said softly, we should go. There's nothing more to do today. Chairs scraped back. Footsteps moved toward the door. No kiss on my forehead. No final prayer. Just relief, thinly disguised relief. When the door closed and the room went quiet, something inside me shifted. For the first time in days, the silence wasn't heavy with expectation. It was peaceful, honest, empty. And in that emptiness, I felt my fingers twitch. At first, I thought I imagined it. I had imagined many things during those long, trapped days, my late husband's voice, my childhood home, the smell of tea on rainy mornings. But this was different. This was physical, real. My hand moved again. My heart began to race, slow and weak but determined. I tried to breathe deeper. Air burned my lungs as if reminding me how long it had been waiting. I wanted to scream, to call for help, but my throat refused. All I could do was fight quietly, inch by inch, against a body that had nearly given up on me. Tears gathered under my closed eyes. Not from pain, but from anger. Anger that they had left me like that. Anger that my own child had accepted my ending so easily. Anger that they had already moved on while I was still here. Still thinking, still feeling. Memories flooded me as I lay there struggling. I remembered the nights I stayed awake nursing fevers. The sacrifices no one ever wrote down. The years I put my own dreams away so my family could live comfortably. I remember telling myself, one day, they'll take care of me the way I took care of them. That lie hurt the most. Minutes passed, or maybe hours, I still don't know. Time behaved strangely in that room, but eventually my eyelids trembled. It felt like lifting weights with lashes instead of arms. Slowly, painfully, I opened my eyes. The ceiling light stabbed my vision. I blinked, tears spilling freely now. I was awake. Alone, but awake. I turned my head just slightly and saw the empty chair where my son had been, sitting minutes before, the cup of cold coffee my daughter-in-law had abandoned, the heart monitor blinking steadily, unnoticed. I wanted them to see me like this. I wanted them to feel the shock, the fear, the guilt. But a deeper thought settled in my mind, calmer and sharper than anything I had felt in weeks. They didn't deserve to witness my return. A nurse walked in later, humming softly as she checked the machines. She froze when she saw my eyes open. "Oh my God," she whispered, dropping the clipboard. "You're awake." I couldn't speak yet, but I looked straight at her. I made sure she saw the truth in my eyes. And in that moment, as alarms rang and people rushed back into the room, one thing became very clear to me. They had left believing my story was over, but mine was only just beginning. When they rushed back into the room, their faces were filled with disbelief, but not joy. I noticed that immediately. Nurses surrounded my bed, speaking quickly, checking lights, calling doctors. Someone lifted my eyelids gently. Another squeezed my hand and gasped when my fingers responded. "She's conscious," a nurse said loudly. "She's responsive." Those words should have brought relief. They should have brought tears of happiness. But when my son stepped forward, his face went pale instead. My daughter-in-law froze near the door, her hand still gripping her purse as if she wasn't sure whether to stay or run. I couldn't speak yet, but I could see everything clearly now. Their shock wasn't love. It was fear. Fear that they had been wrong. Fear that things they had already decided would now have to change. The doctor arrived and began asking me questions. Simple ones. My name, the year, if I could feel pain. I answered with slow blinks and weak nods. Every correct response felt like a small victory, not just over my body, but over the quiet funeral they had already planned in their minds. My son tried to smile. It looked strange on him, like a mask he hadn't worn in years. "Mom, you scared us," he said. I wanted to laugh. Instead, tears slipped from the corners of my eyes. "You were never scared of losing me," I thought. "You were scared of waiting." They moved me to a quieter room later that day. The nurses treated me with care, with respect. They spoke to me, not over me. For the first time in weeks, I felt human again. As my strength slowly returned, so did my memory, sharp and unforgiving. I remembered the conversations they didn't know I heard. She wouldn't want to live like this. We can't put our lives on hold forever. It's probably for the best. Those words echoed louder now that I was awake. My daughter-in-law visited that evening, alone. She sat beside my bed, adjusting the blanket even though it didn't need adjusting. Her voice softened, sweet like honey poured too late. "You gave us such a scare," she said. "We never stopped hoping." I looked at her without blinking. My mouth still wouldn't form words, but my eyes spoke clearly enough. She shifted uncomfortably. "You know," she continued, "we stayed as long as we could today. We were just exhausted. Exhausted. From watching me lie still." I closed my eyes not because I was tired, but because I didn't want to see her anymore. She took that as forgiveness. I felt her squeeze my hand and then leave quietly. My son came the next morning. He brought flowers, the kind that smell strong but mean nothing. He talked about work, traffic, normal things, as if pretending everything was fine could make it so. "I'll handle everything," he said confidently. "You just rest. We'll take care of you." That sentence settled deep in my chest, heavy and cold. I had spent my entire life taking care of him. Now I understood what his promise truly meant. As days passed, I regained my voice. Slowly at first, like a door opening after years of rust. The first words I spoke weren't to my family. They were to the nurse who helped me sit up for the first time. "Thank you," I whispered. She smiled, eyes warm. "You're stronger than they think." She had no idea how true that was. Rehabilitation began soon after. Physical therapy hurt, but the pain reminded me I was alive. Every step I relearned, every spoon I lifted on my own, rebuilt something inside me, not just strength, but clarity. Clarity about who stood by me and who walked away. One afternoon, I overheard my son arguing with someone on the phone in the hallway. He didn't know I could hear so well now. "This changes everything," he said sharply. "Yes, I know, but she's awake now. We can't just, no, listen." His voice lowered. "We'll figure something out." I closed my eyes and breathed slowly. They had already figured something out. I just hadn't been part of the plan. When he came back into the room, I looked straight at him and spoke clearly for the first time. "I heard you." He froze. "Heard what?" "Everything," I said. Silence fell between us, thick and uncomfortable. He tried to laugh it off, but the sound broke halfway. "You're tired," he said. "You're still recovering?" "No," I replied calmly. "I'm finally awake." That was the moment something shifted. He realized I wasn't the fragile, silent body he had prepared himself to lose. I was still his mother, and I remembered. That night, lying alone under the dim hospital lights, I made a decision. I would not beg for love. I would not pretend I hadn't been abandoned. And I would not return to the role they had quietly assigned me. The one who fades away so others can move on comfortably. They thought my story had ended when I stopped moving. They were wrong. It was only changing direction. When they finally discharged me from the hospital, everyone expected the same ending. A quiet return. A grateful mother. A woman who would cling to her family because she had nearly lost everything. I could see it in their faces, the relief mixed with calculation. They thought survival had made me softer. It hadn't. The day I was cleared to leave, my son arrived with papers in his hand. He said they were temporary arrangements. A care facility? Not far, very nice, professionals on staff. He spoke gently, like someone explaining bad weather to a child. "It's just until you're stronger," he said. "You won't be alone." I looked at the papers, then at him. For a moment, I remembered the little boy who used to hide behind my legs on his first day of school. I remembered staying up all night when he was sick, whispering stories so he wouldn't be afraid. And then I remembered the empty room, the door closing, the silence. "I'm not going there," I said. He blinked, surprised. "Mom?" I said no. My daughter-in-law stepped in quickly, her smile tight. "We're only thinking of what's best for you." That's the problem, I replied. You started thinking without me. The car ride home was quiet. Too quiet. They kept glancing at me as if waiting for weakness, confusion, tears. None came. My mind had never been clearer. When we reached the house, I noticed something immediately. Furniture had been moved, personal items boxed up, my favorite chair gone. What happened here? I asked. Oh, my son said quickly, we just made a few changes to make things safer. Safer for whom? That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in the bed that no longer felt like mine and listened to the sounds of a house that had already learned to live without me. In that stillness, I made another decision, one that scared me far less than it should have. The next morning, while they were busy with their routines, I called a lawyer whose number I had memorized years ago, but never sang aloud. My voice didn't shake. I explained everything. He listened. Then he said quietly, "You're not powerless. You just haven't used your power yet." Within days, things began to change. Accounts were reviewed, documents reread, arrangements reconsidered. The surprise on their faces when they realized I still controlled my finances was almost painful to watch. "You should have told us," my daughter-in-law said sharply. "I did," I answered. "You just didn't listen." The final moment came sooner than I expected. One afternoon, they sat me down at the kitchen table, the same table where they once planned my future while believing I couldn't hear. My son spoke first. "We think it might be best if you stay somewhere else," he said. "Just for peace. For everyone." I nodded slowly. "I agree." They relaxed instantly, mistaking agreement for surrender. "I've already arranged it," I continued. "I'll be leaving tomorrow." Their relief turned to confusion. "Where?" he asked. I smiled, not softly, not bitterly, but clearly. "A place where I'm wanted." I left the next morning with one suitcase and my dignity fully intact. I moved into a small, quiet home where no one spoke over me, where my presence was not a burden, where silence meant peace instead of abandonment. Weeks passed, then months. They called less and less. When they did, their voices were polite, distant. I answered kindly but briefly. I had learned the difference between love and obligation. One evening, sitting by the window, I realized something profound. I had survived not just a coma, but a lifetime of being taken for granted. They thought I had disappeared the moment my eyes closed. They thought my story ended when I stopped speaking. But the truth is this: I woke up the moment they walked away. And for the first time in my life, I chose myself. Some disappeared to be forgotten. Others disappeared to finally be free.